No movement on a debt deal again. President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy both claimed that their latest meeting on the debt ceiling was productive yesterday. However, both walked away with no agreement. Nothing on the table. McCarthy says he remains optimistic a deal could be reached. Watch this.
We're not talking over each other. We're not saying, oh, let's bring something new into the discussion. Let's not talk about raising taxes. That's been off for a long time. We literally talked about where we are having disagreements and ideas. So to me, that's productive. Not progress, but productive. I actually believe at the end of the day, we can come to an agreement.
However, President Biden says he would like to see a raise in revenue in order to do a deal.
We both talked about the need for bipartisan agreement, but here's a disagreement. I think we should be looking at tax loopholes and making sure the wealthy pay their fair share. I think revenue matters.
Yes, pay your fair share. Joining me right now is Pennsylvania Congressman, Chief Deputy Whip, and member of the House Appropriations and Rules Committees, Guy Reschenthaler. Congressman, good to see you. Will the Republicans cave on raising revenue through tax increases?
The Republicans, we have done our job. Remember, nobody thought we would get 218 Republican votes to raise the debt ceiling, and we did that, Maria. So it's now Joe Biden's turn to negotiate. He had every opportunity going back to January and February to meet with Kevin McCarthy and House leaders, and he didn't. Just recently, he was in Japan, overseas, while we had this crisis going on. So now it's time for Joe Biden to start to negotiate. It's time for the Democrats to cave. The Republicans in the House, we have done our job.
Well, I mean, Biden says they have also negotiated and agreed to spending cuts. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, Joe Biden said there's absolutely no way he's going to agree to spending cuts, and he wants a clean debt ceiling. So you've already gotten a victory. You've gotten the president to agree to spending cuts. Now he wants tax increases. What are you going to do?
Well, we need two things. Number one, we need to make sure that we don't default. We need to raise the debt ceiling, that is for sure. But we can't do it without spending reforms. As far as the revenue, Maria, we don't have a revenue problem. What we have is a spending problem. Our revenues are at arguably all-time highs, yet we're spending too much money. So we need to curb spending. So any deal we have moving forward has to spend less money than we're spending right now, and we also have to have long-term reforms to bring spending down. Our plan did that. We go back to FY22 levels. We also have caps at 1%. Again, we've done our job. We've acted responsibly. It's the Democrats that have acted extreme by refusing to negotiate.
Okay, so nothing new here. We're waiting for the Speaker and the President to continue these talks. I want to ask you about the appropriations process and how you're going to use the power of the purse, because let's go through all of these disasters that we're seeing at Joe Biden's hand. And, of course, corruption comes to mind. A new Harvard-Harris poll, however, finds only half of voters actually know about the Durham report. Can you imagine? 56% of those who have heard of the Durham report say that the media is not fairly covering it. But a full 69% say that they are not surprised that the FBI violated its own policy to start the Trump-Russia investigation. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was quick to accuse Trump of collusion with Russia, just like Adam Schiff was back in 2017. Here's the former Speaker of the House. Watch this.
This week, we saw cold, hard evidence that the Trump administration and the Trump family have eagerly intended to collude with Russia, a hostile foreign policy to influence an American election.
So she was either lying or she's just inept. Pelosi has yet to respond to the Durham report, Congressman. There was absolutely no cold, hard evidence at all to speak of that Nancy Pelosi was talking about. And yet she misled the American people the way the media did, the way Adam Schiff did, and the Democrats. What are you going to do about it?
Well, we do have to use Article 1, Section 1 authority to have that power of the purse to hold these individuals in the administration accountable. We also need to look at reforming the FBI. Remember, back in the 70s, the CIA was going all over the globe assassinating individuals, and we had robust oversight and investigation, and we reined in the CIA. We need to do the same with the FBI. We should even look at taking the 5 divisions in the FBI and making them siloed. So we have 5 agencies instead of one monolithic, huge super agency that wants to build a building larger than the Pentagon right outside of D.C. But going back to the Mueller investigation and the probe with Russia, top FBI brass knew that this was absolute nonsense from the very beginning. Hillary Clinton was given defensive briefings by the FBI when she was suspected of being the target of foreign espionage. On the other hand, Trump and the Trump administration were set up. Michael Flynn, for example, was set up by Jim Comey and the others. And then we had for 4 years this specter of Russian collusion, which everybody in the administration knew was total nonsense. It was a form of election denial by the Democrats. Then fast forward to 2020, you saw the same actions with the suppression of the Hunter Biden story, where the so-called experts we're signing a letter, Intel experts signing a letter saying that Russian laptop story was Russian disinformation, when the whole time they knew the FBI had the laptop in their possession, and that story was suppressed. There's polling by Rasmussen that would suggest that had the American people known about the Hunter Biden laptop, President Trump would have won re-election. So there is the suppression that Democrats are talking about. So they have election denial on their hands and absolutely, absolutely.
There's
people
a real
need to be held
impact
accountable.
here. Yeah, people need to be held accountable, but we've been talking about this now for 6 years. I mean, let's face it. We were on this program. I was on this program in 2017 saying this is not true. I don't think there's any collusion at all, and it actually starts the collusion with the Democrats. And the media and the Democrats put Trump on defense, that he had to constantly say, I didn't collude, instead of actually dealing with our number one adversary, which was China. And now we see all these years later, China is still keeping up these provocations. The other day, it banned U.S. chipmaker Micron from key infrastructure projects, citing serious network security risks. I spoke with Florida Congressman Carlos Jimenez yesterday on this program. He said companies like Apple, among others, need to consider moving their factories out of China and get out fast. Watch this.
Apple is unbelievably vulnerable to China right now, and we've advised them, hey, it's time to get out, because eventually China will pull that string and China will cut you off.
Yeah, because, Congressman, they have all these national security laws that allow the CCP to go into American companies and raid the place and steal intellectual property. So what are your priorities on the Appropriations Committee? Where do you start holding back money first? Is it the FBI and corruption? Is it the border with the wide open border? Is it foreign affairs with China? You've got a lot of fires to put out.
Well, it's all of it, Maria. We've got to take a look at it. But going back to China, we got to remember that dictator Xi has said back in 2020 that his goal was to get all the supply chains into China and then use them as leverage, cut them off to force diplomatic victories by the CCP over the Western world. So this is by design, and he's only able to get away with it because the American left is complicit in it. Totally fine with offshoring jobs and manufacturing and pharmaceuticals to China. And additionally, we have big business in the form of Apple and Nike that will look the other way when we have horrible human rights abuses in China, yet will criticize the United States. So they should bring those supply chains back to the United States, or at least to friendly Western powers.
How disturbing. I mean, really, just how disturbing, Congressman. You know, there were enablers during the Nazi Germany days as well, I should point out. But we've got a fair amount of enablers here for communist China, that's for sure. Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work. Guy Reschenthaler this morning in D.C.